Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my review for Disney and Pixar's Soul. We're here with a review for a movie, something we don't do too often, and it's for the recently released Soul, a movie that was released on Christmas Day on Disney Plus and was kind of the next big Disney Pixar film, kind of following in the recent lines of the likes of Moana and Coco. Um, So, this review will contain spoilers. I don't know how much. I'm going to try not to reveal everything, obviously, but I'm just saying right off the bat, right now, there will be spoilers. Obviously, the title of the video says spoilers. So, but just saying right here, right now, there are spoilers in this video. So, that being said, just starting off, general thoughts on Soul. It's good, not great. It has some issues. It definitely could have used more thought put into it, especially on certain things. But it's good. It doesn't live up to the same kind of hype and level as the likes of Moana or Coco, um, but it's good. It's not bad. It's an enjoyable watch. If you haven't checked it out, I would definitely suggest doing so. You might find more value in it than I did. I know some people are saying it's their new favorite Pixar film. Um, for me, it's not that great, but it's good. But now to the actual specifics. So once again, spoilers. Um, so I'll give you a couple seconds here. If you don't want spoilers to the film, if you haven't seen it yet, I would suggest going off the video, checking it out before you continue on. Okay? So, for those of you who remain behind, this movie has issues. And I'm going to get my biggest one out of the way first because this is more of an issue with the movie as a whole than a specific part or scene of it. And that is that it just continues a really bad trend amongst movies, most notably animated films and especially Disney ones, that they don't seem to be able to, or at least don't want to, have one of these films with a black leading character without othering them. Disney's last film with a leading black character was Princess and the Frog. And most of the film, she's a frog. And it's the same kind of situation here. Most of this film, our main character, Joe, is a spirit. And in fact, he dies, which we knew was going to happen from the trailers and all, but he dies not even 10 minutes into the film. It's not even 10 minutes in. And it's like throughout the entire rest of the film, he's a spirit. And there's a good portion of the film where he's inside a cat's body and you get to see his actual body being kind of controlled by this other spirit he meets in um the Great Before, as it's called, which I'll get to in a bit. But most of the time, Joe is in some kind of other form. He's either a spirit, shown as a spirit. He's in the body of a cat. Most of the time, it's not Joe that well, it's Joe you're watching, but it's not his actual body. And it's like, again, why can't they have a movie where the black main character is in their body the entire time? They've done it with all these other films, and not just with white characters either. They did it with Coco. They did it with Moana. These two I specifically mentioned because of their recent them being more recent. Like even in Coco, like yeah, Miguel kind of pretended to be a skeleton to fit in with the world of the dead and everything, but he was only in face paint and shit. He wasn't really a skeleton. He wasn't othered in that way. He was still himself the entire time. Moana, there was nothing even slightly like that in Moana. And it's like, yet they can't do that here? Like, why does he have to turn into this cartoony little blue blob of a ghost? Why can't his spirit just be a maybe more see-through? You could even have a blue tint to it, like, but look more like him. Why does it have to be so cartoony and goofy? And then why throughout most of the film does he actually have to be in some other body? And why does he die that early into the movie? It's like it's just at this point in time, it just feels wrong to do something like that. But we're gonna move on because I could rant on that in an entire video just on its own. Let's talk about the actual content of the film. So, Joe is a school music teacher who has dreams of being a great jazz musician. It's something he's always wanted to do, but right now he's just kind of living with what he's got. But he hasn't given up on his dreams. He's still actively searching after them. He's still actively chasing them, even despite what his own mother says, because she's not supportive of his dream. Um, so he's just trying his best to do what he can to achieve his goals when he ends up getting a big opportunity. However, before it can happen, he ends up falling down a manhole and dying. It's not stated exactly what happens, but it's very likely he probably broke his neck or something in the fall and it killed him. Yada yada. Or maybe just the fall was high enough that it killed him. We don't know the exact details, but that's not really something we were going to know because it is still a Disney Pixar film. Um, so instead, we see him go into the great beyond, which is basically it kind of comes across as like almost like an escalator moving sidewalk kind of situation where he's just kind of moving towards this giant glowing like sphere thing that is I guess where souls go after death. It doesn't really explain it that well, but he ends up trying to run away from it and escapes and ends up going to the great before, which is where souls are basically trained before going to Earth. They have to basically be perfected and completed before they go down to Earth and inhabit a body. Um, he ends up meeting some of the arbiters there who are all named Jerry and are these. They're like these kind of weird shapes. Like they almost seem two dimensional and stuff. Like they just don't fit in at all. There are like these lines of light and everything, and it's really weird. They remind me of this character from Adventure Time. I can't remember their name though. There's this character in Adventure Time who's very similar. I think the Lich killed them, if I remember right. I might be wrong on that, but I think the Lich killed them. But it very much reminds me of that. But Joe meets them and meets a specific soul in training named 22. 22 is voiced by Tina Fey. Joe, by the way, is voiced by Jamie Foxx. I don't think I mentioned that. Um, but 22 is basically just an unknown soul at this point because they haven't gotten their assignment, you could say. They haven't been perfected yet. Um, because every time someone tries to work with them to perfect them, they end up being kind of this insane little shit and fucking with them the entire time. Yeah. But they kind of just mess around and everything, don't even like the idea of Earth at all. And so they just don't even try. But Joe gets them to try, as kind of like this mutual agreement and everything. And eventually it goes into where they end up making it down to Earth, but Joe ends up inhabiting this therapy cat while 22 inhabits Joe's body. It leads to some shenanigans, and they eventually set things right while Joe learns a lesson about passion and life. And that's the general synopsis. It's a fine idea, but there's some issues. One, it is paced terribly. The pacing is really just, there's too much happening in too short of a time. There's just so much going on, and just not enough time to tell of all of it. The entire thing with taking over the cat's body and stuff felt also really forced and unnatural. Um, I didn't like really the concept of that. I mean, yeah, it led to some funny moments, but just really it wasn't that interesting. There's this one character, this like hippie character who helps them out. I can't remember his name right now, but he was really fun and everything. I really enjoyed him, but at the same time, he didn't amount to much other than kind of being a plot device for allowing them to get to Earth and even back in the first place. Really, that's all he amounted to. Um, and there were other minor characters here and there, like characters that Joe and 22 interacted with, both on Earth and otherwise. And it's like a lot of them were pretty interesting, but just didn't have enough screen time because there was just so much going on that it just felt like they weren't developed enough. There's this one barber who you only see for a scene who's one of the most interesting characters in the film. It like one of the characters you want to know so much more about, yet you only see him for a single scene. There's this jazz musician that Joe looks up to, who's only seen in a couple of scenes and just doesn't get enough time. There's this student, this former student of Joe's, who introduces him to the jazz musician. I would have loved to know more about him, but no, he's very minor. And that's the problem. They introduce all these interesting characters and then don't focus on any of them. They just like it's just like throwing out characters at you one after another without any time to develop or focus on them, and it just feels like wasted potential. Um, let's talk about the things I did like though. The voice acting from Jamie Foxx, from Tina Fey, from everyone in the film was fantastic. I mean, I've had never really had a reason to doubt them before, so it's like I didn't expect them to be bad, but they did a good job. The music was great. I liked the music. The animation and art style was fantastic. I loved it. It had so much diversity and interesting shapes and colors and styles to it, which was fantastic. There was some really good comedy, some really good story moments. There's this one scene in particular where 22 speaks to his mother, though, yeah, 22 speaks to Joe's mother. Um, but Joe, in the body of the cat, is telling her what to say to the mother. And she's kind of repeating it line by line in Joe's body. And it's this really great moment, and it leads to a really emotional, powerful moment as well in his mother kind of her reaction to all of it. But with as little as was actually put into his mother as a character, it just feels again like it just wasn't given enough to really be as impactful as it could have been. I would have loved it to be more impactful. I think it could have been much more impactful, but it just wasn't because there wasn't enough put into it, into the character. And then there's the lesson, the moral of the end. And there's kind of two that interweave. There's the idea of living your life in a way that you enjoy, just going out there and living. You know what I mean? But then there's also the idea of if you if the pursuit of your passion is all there is, if you follow the pursuit while forgetting what you're passionate about and why you're passionate about it, then in the end, you'll get no satisfaction out of it, no matter how many achievements you make, because you're only focused on the next goal. You're only focused on getting better rather than actually enjoying the passion. And in this case with Joe, it's about music. He's passionate about music, especially about jazz, and he forgets why he's passionate about it, why it matters so much to him. And it's just all about his goals, his dreams. And there's nothing wrong with having goals and dreams, but you can't let them rule over your life. You have to be able to enjoy it as well. So it's kind of like this dual moral that kind of they interweave into each other, which they're good morals, and I get it, and I actually like it, but again, it's just with so much going on through this film, with not as much time to breathe as it needs, I feel like it doesn't get across as well as it could. Um, but yeah, it's like this movie has plenty of good to it. And like I said, I would definitely suggest, if you haven't, checking it out. But though if you haven't, I would wonder why you're still watching this, unless you don't mind spoilers. But yeah, I would definitely suggest checking out. There is a lot to love with this movie. It's worth the watch, but it does have its issues. It's not perfect, and it's not as good as the likes of Moana and Coco. And that's a little disappointing. But at the same time, I mean, it goes to just show how good Moana and Coco were as well. But yeah, this is just my opinion in the end. It is just my views on the film, and I want to hear yours. So tell me in the comments below what you thought of Disney and Pixar's Soul. And thank you all so much for tuning in. So for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See you all next time.